Hi, readers. For today's reading lesson, we are going to be continuing on the lesson that we started last week during reading class, where we talked about finding the underlying ideas about a character in a biography. So that's like thinking about taking out your imaginary shovel and digging deeper and deeper with every page that you turn in a biography. So today I'm going to show you the example of how I dug deep about Walt Disney. And then you're going to be practicing this skill all on your own when you read about Amelia Earhart. So, first off, I read this whole entire book about Walt Disney, and now I'm going to be answering some of the different questions to look at those deeper ideas, to think about who Walt Disney is, what I can learn from him, what he learned from the choices that he made in his life, and thinking of how I can describe him. So, first, we're going to look at some of the questions that you'll be answering about your book, and that I'll be answering about Walt Disney. So this chart might look familiar because we talked about it last week during our reading lesson, and we're practicing a lot of these questions. So we're thinking just like when we wrote our personal narratives and we had to find the heart of our story and stretch it out because that's where the feeling and the emotion was. That's what the authors of these biographies wanted to do as well. They wanted you to find the heart of who these people are, and they stretch that out. They let you in on the clues that would tell you what the big lesson or idea is in this story, about what lessons the character learned, what the message was, the theme, the moral. And there are different times in their lives where they have to make a choice or they're faced with a challenge. And how they react and what they choose to do and what they say shows a lot about them as a character and really shows a lesson that they learned and a lesson that we as the readers can learn. And so, again, when we get to that last question here, where it's talking about those challenges, we want to think, well, what helps them? What helps them move forward? What helps them learn? And what life lesson do they not only learn, but we also learn as the reader? So, here in my book about Walt Disney, I am going to move ahead to this page here, page 32 and 33. So I'm going to read this page to you, and then we are going to think about one of those questions from the chart. Okay, so this page and this chapter is called Doing the Impossible. In 1933, the Disney's daughter, Diane, was born. 3 years later, Disney and his wife adopted a baby girl, Sharon. Disney enjoyed spending time with his daughters, and he was also busy at his studio. Disney was working on his biggest idea yet. He wanted to make a feature-length animated movie. People said his idea was too risky. It would take too much time and money to make an animated feature. And who would want to go to a theater to watch such a long cartoon? Some made fun of his idea, calling it Disney's folly. So in case there were a few words that you didn't know, risky means involving a chance of something bad happening. And folly means a foolish idea. And then over on the right-hand side here, a quote directly from Walt Disney in his own words says, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." So that quote of his own words really gives us a glimpse into what goes on in his mind and what he thinks and feels. So now let's think to the question saying, if you find a time in the story where the main character made a big choice, usually there's a lesson attached to that choice. So thinking, what can we learn about Walt Disney in this moment when people are saying that him making a animated movie is foolish and it would take too long and it would take too much money and no one would want to go watch something so long. But what we can learn from Walt Disney when facing this challenge is that he didn't care what other people thought. He was going to persevere and he was going to follow his heart. And so that's what we can learn from Walt Disney here, is that no matter what other people say, Walt Disney follows his heart, follows his dreams, and takes chances. And I know this, so here's my evidence. I'm justifying, explaining my thinking. I know this because Walt Disney himself said the quote, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." So if he thinks it's fun to do something that other people think is impossible and too hard, it shows me just how motivated he is to follow his dreams. So that was an example for you of how you use the evidence from the book to justify or explain your thinking. To find evidence from the book, pull it out and put that into your answer. Another question that you are going to have today when you are doing your reading questions after reading the book about Amelia Earhart is you are going to have to look at this chart here about what are called character traits. And character traits are words we would use to describe a character or describe a person. You could describe yourself looking at these character traits and thinking about what kind of person you are. So what you're going to need to do when you get to slide 6 is you are going to have to choose 3 words to describe Amelia Earhart based on what you read about her and what you know about her as a person. And you have to explain why you chose the words you did. So when I'm thinking of Walt Disney, I'm going to look at this chart here. And I'm going to think of words that I can use to describe him and why I would describe that. I would say that Walt Disney is creative. And we know Walt Disney is creative because he had such a vivid imagination. He thought of out of the box things and he wanted to do things that were so fun and so different. So that's why I think he's creative, because he did brand new things that other people hadn't done. I also think that he was very inventive. To go along with what I said for creative, he wanted to do something new to entertain people that hadn't been done before. These full-length featured animated movies was something so different and so new and so inventive. And he wanted to do that. Another word I would use to describe him isn't actually on this chart, but I know it's a describing word, and I know it's a word that explains someone's character and explains the kind of person they are. He was a dreamer. He constantly had dreams and set out to reach them. And he was motivated to get there and to reach his dreams and his goals. And there are so many quotes out there, famous quotes of things that he said that prove that he's a dreamer. And just like that one quote that we saw on the page here in Epic, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. That's just one of the examples, but there's many more in the book of things that he said, which show that he loved to have dreams and reach them. So that's how you are going to choose words to describe Amelia Earhart. So make sure they are adjectives, describing words. They can be words from this chart, or if there are some other ways to describe her that you don't see on this chart, that's okay too. Just make sure that they are describing words. So not words that are dates or years when she was born, or names of places or people. Those aren't adjectives. So you want to make sure they are describing words to describe someone's character. So again, a reminder of what you're going to do today. You are going to be going to Epic, and you can get there by either clicking on the picture here of this book or the link right below it, and that is the book you are going to be reading today. Now, this National Geographic Kids book does have the read aloud feature, but we ask that you read it yourself. If you would like to listen to it a second time after you read it once yourself, that is fine, but please make sure you are trying your best. This is a reading lesson, and we want you to do the reading. So make sure you are trying your best and reading it yourself, and only listening to it if you need help pronouncing a word or for a second time after. You can include this book as part of your 25 minutes of reading on your reading log. Just make sure that if it takes you less than 25 minutes to get through this book, that you are also reading something else and plugging that into your reading log for today as well. Always challenge yourself. Always try to read more than 25 minutes, but at least the minimum is reading for 25 minutes. And then remember to fill in that reading log as well. After you've read your book, you are going to come in here and you are going to answer the questions. You have a question here on slide 3, which has you go back to page 14 in your book and explain about what we can learn from Amelia Earhart when she decided to do this dangerous flight. She was going to be the very first female to ever do this, and we want you to explain to us, what did we learn from her? What lesson were we able to learn from her? And always use full, complete sentences and evidence from the book, like I did in my example of Walt Disney, to explain and justify why you're saying that lesson and why you're explaining what you said. On slide 4, you have your next question. This is for when you get to the very end of the book, you've read the whole book, and you're talking about the overall message or lesson we can learn from her. So it might be similar to what you talked about on the slide before, but think about everything she's done in her life. What can we learn from her? What message does she show based on all the things she accomplished and tried to do in her life? Again, full sentences, explain your thinking. And then lastly, you're going to use this chart when you come to this slide here to choose 3 words to describe Amelia Earhart, and you're going to explain why you chose the words you did. So you'll say something like, Amelia Earhart is brave because, and then you'll explain why. Or Amelia Earhart is adventurous because, and then explain why. So don't just say one word, you have to explain your thinking with evidence, with that because, and then the evidence, why you are saying that word, why you know that word describes her. So have so much fun reading. There is so much to learn about Amelia Earhart. She is one of my personal favorite women in history. I actually did a project on her when I was in 4th grade, so I have learned so much about her, and I cannot wait for you to learn about her as well. So happy reading. Make sure you put evidence in your sentences when you are explaining your thinking. Full, complete sentences, capital letters, punctuation. Come on, remember that. We want to do our very best 3rd grade work and have so much fun reading.